There's no question. I think the risk you run when you make a move like that, particularly in a cap world, where you had a guy that on the ice particularly gave you what he gave you at a really, really friendly cap. Yeah. And again, I guess the question might be why now, as opposed to perhaps a trade deadline in 2027, to really, okay, how can you continue to retool and still put a competitive product on the ice? And he plays a role. He's a penalty killer. He's a power play guy. But again, it's easy to opine or perhaps criticize moves, but until you're empowered to make those decisions, you have to respect the result and ultimately move on.
And now, the Rink Rap Podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
What's up, Blueshirts faithful? I am Jim Cerny. This is the Rink Rap Podcast. Thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, and thanks for joining us once again. You've been so fired up these past couple weeks, Rangers fans, with all the doings and, the big trades and the excitement around the draft. And July 1st was a whirlwind. And certainly we got to a lot of that on last week's show. But I know you're sick and tired of hearing me talk. So we bring in Dave Maloney this week, former Rangers captain, of course, current television broadcaster over at MSG Network, and one of the all-around good guys in the game and in and around the Rangers organization, because you'd rather hear what he's got to say than I got to say. In fact, I'd rather hear him speak than hear myself speak. So big wind up there, Dave. Welcome and happy summer to you. Happy 4th.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's always a pleasure to visit a little bit. And, the offseason's been extended once again for the Rangers standpoint. And, but you have to look forward, and I know we're going to go over a few things, and but life is good. And in the last 3 months, my grandchild family has grown by 3.
Oh, that's awesome!
We're 7 now, and so it's great. Life is really good. This next stage of life, and a number of factors, has been really good and exciting, and all those good things. So, but it is good to talk hockey. I'm presently in Northern Ontario in Canada at my brother Jim's place. It's a beautiful day outside. It's fun to talk hockey in July.
So are you, did you run out? You're in Ontario. So did you run out and get your Gavin McKenna 92 Maple Leafs jersey? And did you burn your Brady Tkachuk jersey for the other team up there?
No, I did grow up a Leaf fan, and it's interesting. The Leafs and Rangers are a lot alike. Their history is not, from the Rangers standpoint, and for 60 some odd years now, there's not a lot of hardware is showing up in either franchise. Yeah. Of course, with all the machinations that Toronto's gone through and the number 1 pick, but this is a time of the year to be excited. Everybody's back to the starting line, and whether it's realistic or not, we have 4 or 5 months to deal with that. But now it's fun to talk about. It's fun to talk optimistically about one's hometown team, and there's certainly an awful lot of chat around Toronto about Gavin McKenna, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I mentioned the Senators too, man.
Yeah.
You talk about a pissed off group of fans up there,
right.
And
in a way that's just the nature of things. And there's a lot of the Canadian franchises have some difficulties keeping, particularly the players from south of the border, and now the league is basically a players' league. So if you get to a point where you don't want to be anywhere, you just say, I don't want to be here anymore.
Right.
And it's been, particularly Ottawa's been a victim of it. Calgary's been a victim of it. But it is the reality of the game, and the reality of that aspect of the game is going to fire up the locals. So I think there's a lot of things that, that's going to happen. Well, there's a pretty good chance this is going to happen, and Brady Tkachuk's a hell of a player, and he's going to be missed in Ottawa, but Ottawa will move on. People have short memories.
They do and they don't.
Right.
They do until they don't.
Yeah, that's right. It works till it doesn't, right? Yeah.
But, let's start at the trade area. And there's a lot of ground we want to cover. And, I certainly don't want to take up your entire summer day today. But let's start with trades. And let's start first with Vincent Trocheck. And before we even get into what they got back for him, and then also get into the Dorofeyev trade and everything, let's talk about how much. I don't think it's been written enough and discussed enough about what a big void there is when Vincent Trocheck leaves. Both everything he did on the ice for the New York Rangers, the leader he was, the example that he set. And I'm not saying this to say I don't agree that, as part of the retool at age 33, it wasn't time to trade him. But that said, there is a pretty big void on the ice and in the dressing room without Vincent Trocheck. And do you agree?
Oh, I certainly agree. I think, and those are the things that on the business side of it, the people that are empowered to be Chris Drury and his staff, empowered to make the decision as to what they want the future to look like and what they want tomorrow to look like, let alone down the road. So there's no question. I think the risk you run when you make a move like that, particularly in a cap world, where you had a guy that on the ice particularly gave you what he gave you at a really, really friendly cap number. And again, I guess the question might be why now, as opposed to perhaps a trade deadline in 2027 to really, how can you continue to retool and still put a competitive product on the ice? And he plays a role. He's a penalty killer. He's a power play guy. But again, it's easy to opine or perhaps criticize moves, but until you're empowered to make those decisions, you have to respect the result and ultimately move on. But I think there are a lot of people out there, and my biggest observation would have been, you move. It's a little bit like when you move Ryan McDonough. You go, for whatever reasons you're moving McDonough, now you got to replace him. And, you're probably looking for the same type of player you just moved. So those are the things that get a little bit, I'm not sure, suspect or forms the debate that gets formed around a player at that stage of his career. So that would be my observation about Vincent, is that in a cap world, there's a pretty friendly number. And again, if you're down the middle with, if you go down the middle with Zibanejad, Miller, Trocheck, and Laba, that looks pretty good. But that's not to be. Jersey, if he can stay healthy, is a hell of a player. It sounds like the kid they got from in the deal from Utah is kind of a character guy that plays a little bit of hump and heart. So time will tell. But I at the risk of repetition, I think there are some cause for debate as to was this the time that this had to be done.
Yeah, I made the argument. I got some pushback with some guests about this, and then a couple agreed. But I felt like the way things went down ahead of last year's trade deadline, and roster management, Vincent sits out. He spoke openly. He was clearly, I don't know if upset's the right word, but he was upset through the process, right? He wasn't happy, and he's envisioning, everything he has to do with his family, and I want to remain on the East Coast, and then nothing, and then it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I thought you saw Sully afterwards. Sully was like thrilled that a trade didn't go down, or at least from the outside, it looked like, boy, Sully was pretty happy that this guy's still on our team. But I sensed that there was a little bit different Vincent Trocheck, not the way he played, but I thought that he kind of went into himself down the stretch of the season. He wasn't the same guy, wasn't as available with the media. He had been such a spokesperson for years. And I just felt like, you know what? I don't think he's happy. I think that I know you can't always try and do the right thing by the player all the time. You got to do, if you're Chris Drury, you got to do what's best for the organization. But you know what? if at some point you're going to move him anyway,
Yeah.
to make the clean break this summer. It seemed like the right thing to do. Yes, for the organization, but most definitely for Vinny and his family.
Well, that's a really good point, Jimmy. That's a really good point. It's not cut your losses because there is no loss. The guy was still a value, but there's that lingering thing. And then if things don't get out of the gate the way you hope to start, then it starts to kind of fester, doesn't it? And then there's always, it's a little bit like the Jacob Trouba situation. Now that you think about it, I think you raise a really good point. When Jake went through the issues of declining a trade, not declining a trade, it came to camp a different Jacob Trouba, and that was not healthy.
Yeah,
and that is a really good point. You know, at one point you say, okay, you got him, but is he the same Trocheck that he was prior to the trade deadline of 2026? You know, that is a really good point. I would agree wholeheartedly with that observation. The other side of this is you clean the slate. He moves on. He's going to a place that he has to agree to go to.
Yep.
He's going to a good team, a really solid franchise, new in the league. And you know, it's not like you wipe your hands because the assumption is your hands are dirty. You know, you just right. You just move on. And I think overall, that's probably the best way to sit with this.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Jersey. If he stays healthy, that's probably a nice add. Listen, you know, playing defense in the NHL a heck of a lot better than I do, right? So they remade, Chris and company remade that second defense pair, which was clearly a priority for the organization this offseason. And that's not with a knock on Will Borgen, who played there, or, you know, other guys that played on the other side, but they feel that they've greatly upgraded that second pairing. So I wonder, you kind of on the inside, a little bit on the outside, what your take is about remaking with Pederson and Jersey on that second pair.
I don't think there's any question. First of all, it was clear listening to Mike Sullivan at the end of the season what he thought the issues were, and all season long. And let me tell you, there was an observation out there that maybe the coach was the issue. Let me tell you something. That season, which cratered to where it got to, withheld some sense of responsibility and character and compete because of Mike Sullivan and the staff. He was terrific. And to listen to him talk about what, the passion of the game and the things that are expected, by no stretch of anyone's imagination was Mike Sullivan and his staff an issue. That being said, it was interesting to hear Mike and to listen to him during the season, how important it is to get the puck out of your own end.
Yeah.
In today's game. It's a possession game. You defend with the puck, and you defend when you have the puck, and more efficiently do you move the puck and control the puck in the defensive zone, better off you're going to be up ice. So there's no question there's an upgrade in that capacity. Pederson has a history with Mike. I like Pederson because he plays a bit of a bite. The guy that I get a little bit concerned about where he fits is Braden Schneider.
Yeah.
And I am a huge Braden Schneider supporter. Huge. And I think he represents sometimes what's gone on in the Ranger franchise is you slot in the next gunslinger, and then your homegrown guy doesn't get the chance he should get over time to grow.
Huh. Yeah.
And for me, I don't know how I would react if everything that's out there in cyberspace and in social media that Braden Schneider was traded. But to me, it would be another situation where a young player, homegrown, home drafted, did he really get the chance to play. You'd say, well, yeah, he got 40 games, but or whatever he got, or whatever he got, or whatever. It's like I often think about Jack Hughes, the difference between Jack Hughes and Kakko. Now, the franchises are in different situations, there's no question. But, 2 shifts into his opening night with the Devils, Jack Hughes is running the 5-on-3 power play. Well,
Right.
Do they have to do that? Probably to create a buzz. Is he capable? Is he going to be 220 games into his career? Probably not. But to me, the thing. Well, Kakko. Now, what type of player is Kakko? Who knows? But would the Rangers have been better with Kakko last year? I think maybe. But did he really get a chance? You say, well, he played with Mika. Yeah, he played for Mika for 8 games, and then it was back, and then he was scratched. And, so to me, Braden Schneider is the guy that I have a real soft spot for, from the fact that I think he's a hell of a player. He's a hell of a kid. He's got all kinds of leadership qualities. Yeah. Where does he fit? That's the only situation, the only observation I would have about the 6. Right?
Yep. And it's yours are like Kreskin, I guess, right? Because that's where I was going with the next question. To me, in fact, it's the next story I'm working on right now for the website is, where does Schneider fit? And how does he feel about this? And you nailed it. He's a great kid. He's a great teammate. I think he's, wherever it's going to be, Rangers, whomever, he's going to be a letter-wearing guy in his career. I know he's 24 now, but at some point he's going to be that guy. He's a stand-up kid, whether it's going well, whether it's going poorly, whether it's somewhere in between. There is so much to like there. And I just wonder internally, though, how he digests this. We talked about how Trocheck, maybe things change a little bit around the deadline. His name's in the rumors all the time. And now, we traded Will Borgen. Oh, but we got Sean Jersey to play on the second pair, Braden, I just wonder, and you know him better than I do. I just wonder how he absorbs all that and how all of this now goes into this contract, which you and I really can't speak to. We're not on either side here, but it's going to go to arbitration. Do the Rangers want to go the arbitration route? I don't think anybody wants to, but do they want a 1-year deal? They want a 2-year bridge deal? Are they still evaluating him? Do they believe in him long-term? Is he going to be a pillar, part of this group from the retool that carries this thing forward? But then, you have to invest term and dollars, in him. Do they believe in him that much? Does he think that they believe in him that much? Like, I think this is a really crucial and fascinating next couple, whatever it is, weeks or months, whatever it ends up to be for Schneider and his relationship with the organization.
Well, there's no question. I think ultimately you or I don't really know how he's, I'm around him a little bit more than you are, but my conversations with him are lots of times just chatting, getting to know him, and how he handles. I'm not going to pursue that unless he's looking for some old guy to talk to. But there's no question. I mean, the business aspect of the sport, because the numbers are bigger. The numbers are bigger, and this is a business. There's no question it's a business. And the decisions that Chris and his staff make, he's empowered to make those. And now you're talking about a franchise that finished 25th overall last year, right? So is there an excess of riches? Well, you kind of look at the Ranger blue line and say maybe, but they're 20. They're coming off. They've got to do. You talk about looking forward. I often say, well, how's the bar? Like, what's the bar that's been set? Well, the bar was reset pretty low, but you're starting again. And I think there are a lot of people love Braden Schneider, and they should. And I think what he has to hang on to is the fact that, you know what? If they don't like me here, I'm going to be a good player in this NHL.
Yeah.
It's like you have to remind guys, so which is difficult with the team that you were birthed by, right? You have that loyalty to the team that drafted you. I mean, I eventually was traded to Buffalo, 9 years after being a part of the franchise, and it hurt. It hurt from the standpoint of you put that time of innocence where you don't really know enough to know about what's going on, but you're fully invested in being a part of this franchise that drafted you. But I think in conversations with some guys along the way, you have to remind them you are a really good NHL player, and if it doesn't work here, it'll work. It'll work. It may not work here because really, unless you're Gresh or unless you're guys that spend their whole career, which are very few, there's a good chance you probably won't finish with that team that birthed you.
Right. Yeah.
But that's difficult. It comes a little bit easier. It's difficult when you're 20, 21, 22, 23. But those are the things. I think that he has to continue to remind himself or be reminded, however that works, you are a hell of a player. And if it doesn't work out here, it's going to work out somewhere else. Just go away. So I'm hoping that, because if that is his attitude, he's still a valuable player. He's a valuable player for the Ranger team. So to your point, and then once again to your observation, the next month will determine a lot about Braden. Then it's up to Mike Sullivan and his staff to make it work, right?
Right, of course.
It's because he's going to get, he's going to get penalty kill time. He's going to get his. Is he going to get the 20-plus minutes that he was getting playing up in the top four in that bottom rotation, which looks like it's setting up? That's what I kind of refer to as on rotations, right? It's like everybody's going to play. It's not like in the days when we played where the top four played and the bottom two didn't in the top.
Right.
It's not that way anymore. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we could go down that rabbit hole for a while, but I think you really covered so many different aspects of it. It's interesting. One of the things you said was, and one of the things we were talking about, and I guess I raised it too, was we'll know a little bit more about where the Rangers stand with the player, with what kind of contract they come at him with. And I'm not even saying so much dollars, but is it 1-year deal, bridge deal? Hey, continue to prove yourself, or is it a long-term commitment? Something that they didn't want to do last year with Keandre Miller, and of course Carolina was going to offer sheet him. We know that whole story. But this is a big windup to a player they just acquired because they couldn't wait to get Pavel Dorofeyev to a 7-year, $77 million commitment agreement there after acquiring him for great reason. Like, this is you talk about checking off all the boxes in your retool, right? Boy, we're looking for guys that are in the earlier stages of their career. They're going to be here for a long time, or could be here for a long time. Cornerstone players. Oh yeah, we need a goal scorer badly, just a pure sniper goal scorer. And you get 25-year-old Dorofeyev, and it costs you a couple first rounders, costs you 3 picks overall and everything. I've searched, because it's part of my job. I've tried to search for there's got to be there's always a negative in something. I'm like, there's not a lot of downside to adding Dorofeyev to this roster. And what's your take?
It certainly doesn't seem that way. But to me personally, I certainly excited it fills a void. His analytics suggest that despite great players, great playmakers in Marner and Eichel, he didn't really necessarily need those guys. So from an analyst, but I always like to, you never really know till you see a guy day in, day out. Now you have to trust the scouting staffs that are presenting. You trust his record, obviously. But for me personally, it wasn't long, because I remember thinking at the time, were the Rangers really ready? Were they really ready for Panarin?
Right.
Was that like, were they that close? It turns out that they were pretty good. But then when you see him practice, then you see him in the games it wasn't a long period of time where you realized, oh,
yeah,
Panarin's good. You know, well, it's not that I'm withholding judgment on his value. I'm certainly respecting, but personally, I'm looking forward to watching him practice and watching him play.
Yeah.
I'm almost assured that what I'm hearing will be validated, and I'm looking forward to that being the case, because there's no question he comes billed as a guy that is something that everybody needs. You know, and the thing was to say, okay, well, why does Vegas? Why do they have to move him? Well, despite how Vegas or Florida work, you can't pay everybody.
Right.
There is. You have to keep. So, there's no question. I'm excited to see him slot in. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about shoulder check. He's been a loyal shoulder checker for us in our initiative in the second game. He's been in all 3 games. So I wouldn't say that I know him. I certainly have introduced myself to him, but I often like to see anybody who comes to on Broadway. Okay, let's watch him for a while and see, and just see over the course of time whether what we expected is the case, and we hope, yes, indeed, what we expected is the case.
Right. Quick thought on the goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know you talk about the one thing that the Ranger faithful out there that tune in and they send the messages and they're out there on social media and all that. Dylan Garand has been the guy. You know, everybody always loves what's next. Not that people were saying, oh, you know, he's going to replace Igor or anything, but really excited for, hey, when he gets his shot in the NHL, maybe he can be the backup. And he certainly couldn't have made a much better impression than he did. Mm-hmm. But it was 3 starts down the stretch of a lost season for the Rangers. But certainly he did what he had to do to capture everybody's attention. Quickly signed a 2-year contract. He was an RFA at the end of the season, signed his 2-year contract. And I think everyone's kind of revving up for, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people, certainly his fan base, revving up for him to be that number 2. And I had given the caution of, I don't think you can just give him that job. Like, I really thought that the Rangers were going to sign a veteran goalie in the offseason. I didn't think that it would be somebody of the level, if that's the right word, of Joonas Korpisalo, you know, that you went out and acquired him. Right. The salary. Exactly. I thought maybe somebody easier that would be, you know, somebody easier to slip through waivers and, you know, he could be your 3rd guy in Hartford, because we saw what happened last year when Igor went down in January. Again, a big windup. I'm big on the big windups, as you can tell. Kind of your thoughts about the Korpisalo trade. Were you a little bit surprised at all?
Yeah, I was. To me, with the goaltending, and it's not like every player, right? Like, does he deserve a chance at the next level? And is 3 games really enough?
Right.
For that, he certainly was electric the way he played. It was down the stretch. I love his style. There's a panache to his game that is really neat. He reminds me of Marc-Andre Fleury. That's what he reminds me of. Like his mannerisms, and like he darts to the corner like Fleury. And I guess the thing is 3 games down the stretch of a tossed in the towel season. Has he earned that chance for a 30-game backup role? Now, and they would defer to people who are paid to make that decision.
Yeah.
The goaltending coach is a tremendous dude, coming on the heels of a retiring Benoit Lair.
Yeah.
So and you mentioned the word surprise, and I was surprised only at the financial commitment. Now the cap is rising, right? The Rangers have cap space. They're getting a guy with experience. So how, again, Dylan Garand might be in a little bit like, although Braden Schneider has every right to know that he's an NHL player, Dylan Garand has to continue to believe that he has to play himself mentally and physically into that belief. I'm an NHL goaltender. Irregardless of on opening night, it's Shesterkin and Korpisalo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is how you see it, right? Like I know we're setting up a competition, but I don't see how it doesn't end up being Igor and Korpi.
Unless somebody right away he blows the gates off of because he's going to need waivers, Korpisalo to go down, right?
Yeah, so does Dylan now, but
now. So maybe, and a 3 goaltender rotation never works.
No, absolutely not.
There's only 2 nets in practice.
Right.
And that
two nets in practice, and if he stays healthy, Igor is going to start 62 games this year.
Right. Even if you hope that your team is better and he's starting 55 games, I think ultimately that's what you want to get. And now with the goaltending position, you need somebody that can get 30 starts and 21 wins.
Right.
So that's going to be a bit of a tricky situation, I think, how that plays out. And the fact, again, we're both, I think, repeating ourselves. The concern was a surprise to me was the salary commitment. The salary commitment was probably the biggest surprise. Like 2 years at 3 and change. Ooh. When you look at the goaltenders that have actually backstopped championship teams in recent times.
Yeah, well, it's true.
Anyway, so that's just another sidebar story of training camp.
Yeah, and now pivoting, I mentioned the retool before, and Chris, back in January said, we, in essence, I'm paraphrasing, but we want to get younger, we want to get bigger, we want to get faster. We don't just necessarily want to get draft picks. We want to get guys that are knocking on the NHL door when we make trades, and they certainly have done that. Right.
Yeah.
And just kind of get your overall opinion on that with, Green Tree and Baudouin and Battaglia, and then Aspinall was already their kid, but, he's coming up off a really good OHL season as well. Do you sense a little juice, just a little excitement about that? Hey, there's some guys coming here.
Yeah. But that's the magic, isn't it? Like, and the thing is, to me, of recent history, the Rangers have showed. Now, again, Tanner Glass, I don't know verbatim the credo between he and Jed Ortmeyer, but the Rangers did a really good job developing the lower picks.
Yeah, very good. Yes, very good job.
There's people out there as well. The Rangers haven't developed; they haven't this and that. No, with the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round picks, they did a really good job.
Yeah.
The question is, how have they done with the upper picks? And that's where where you get into that situation. So the lower picks, there's no hurry, right? There's no hurry.
Right.
So you have the patience to work with them. Then with the upper picks, it seems that there's no hurry, but they're on the roster, and do they get chances? Like Noah Laba was a really good story last year. He actually made the team out of camp, and he was a 4th round pick.
Yep.
That's a really good story, right? So I think you can look back over the history of the franchise, and I think that may very well be a consistency over time. Is the upper end choices, how many really end up being Chris Kreider, Brian Leetch, stuff like that. So that being said, I was really impressed you couldn't help but be impressed. The machinations on draft day by getting Dorofeyev and keeping the 5th pick.
Yep.
And that pick, apparently, of the plethora of defense that were in the first round, is deemed to be, by my understanding, I have not seen him play. And I talked about before, I haven't seen him play over a course of time.
Right.
But it sounds like he may be the closest one to being ready to play.
Yep.
And it's funny, just on a sidebar, Liam Greentree, the junior team played against the Kitchener Rangers in the semifinals of the Memorial Cup, or the OHL championships. And I went and watched game 5, which was the clincher. And again, it's one game. To me, I was surprised at how little he was used in the game. And I came away with the impression this is a kid that needs to move on. He needs to get to the next level. It's almost like it's time. It's time to move, and he's ready to move, and he's going to need the next jump. So that's a little sidebar on the one game I saw from him. Big, strong guy. There's a question about his speed. But no, when you go down now and you look at the guys that are there are some reasons to think that Chris and his staff did a pretty good job of maintaining that 5th pick. And through trades, got picked up a couple of other teams' first picks.
Right.
So pretty good job. Again, the recent history hasn't shown that propensity to be a little more careful, I suppose is the word. But there's a lot of reasons to think that the franchise is in better shape now than it was in April.
Right. And that's a great summation right there. I think that's a fair way to put it. Of course, the question becomes then, I was watching Elliot Friedman's podcast yesterday. He said, I'm just not quite sure how good they are yet. It's like what you said, I got to see them play. I'm not quite sure where they're at, but in the bigger picture, and I'm paraphrasing now, they're deeper and they're better than they were when last season ended.
Right. To me, the most disappointing season for me wasn't last year. It was
correct. Absolutely.
To me, the year before was a disaster.
Yep.
There were so many things that went on. They had no business having that December of 2024 with the roster they had, winning 4 games. No business. So, and again, that's the last comment. You move forward. There's a new sheriff in town. I like the message. But I always say, listen, there's one team that starts the starting line that doesn't have to answer to anybody.
Right, correct.
And this year it'll be Carolina.
Right.
Now, to varying degrees down to 32, you have a lot more things to answer to. And there are 16 teams that don't make it. That's 50% of the league. Don't get a chance.
Right.
And of the 16, there's 1 left. And there are teams that finish below 500. And I think the real doom for the Rangers season last year was their start at home. And when you really break down the start, not even so much in defense because of a Ranger guy, they were beat. Of the losses at home, the opposition's goaltender was the first star, and the legitimate first star, like I'm saying 5 of the 10 games or whatever it was.
Right.
So if those 10 points, so you get 8 of those points, which you probably deserved, it's going to be a different story out of the start. So, okay, that being said, my bottom line is you finish 25 overall.
30th overall.
Or 30th overall, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
30th overall. The bar is pretty low.
Yep.
So the expectations can't help but be higher. But let's keep in mind, and to me, the dialogue where the franchise, not to to kill the dream of winning a Stanley Cup. But how close are we when you go down the roster of experience and makeup to Carolina?
Right.
And that's okay. It's okay. That's where you're at. I think it's fair and it's realistic to assess where you are, make your changes, and just go play.
Right. Yep.
So to Elliott's observation, and I think we really, if you're looking at it, and this is not, to me, I hope I don't look at it as a criticism to me, that's reality. The reality is, and every season I'll go in, I'll say, okay, how do we match up against the top teams?
Yep.
And if you're realistic, and even with that kind of eternal optimism, you've got to come to an honest assessment and go from there, and then root like a bastard.
Right. And need some luck too. And you need luck along the way. And a lot of that is health, because you're dead on about the beginning of the season, that was a brutal thing to go through and then to come back from. But they were still, I didn't think they were going to be a playoff team, but they were still on the fringe. But then you lose Fox and Shesty on the same night, not even the same week or month, the same game. And that was something there was no way that group was capable of coming back from that, winning enough games without them.
No. Yeah. I mean, you can play, it's like, you put your fingers in the dike, right? You can hold on and you can win.
Right.
You can win, but you can't win without your top players. You just can't. And the Rangers were leveraged so much to the top players. JT Miller was banged up a lot of the season.
Yep.
Right. They start without Trocheck. So, again, those aren't things specific to the Ranger franchise. There's no question.
Right.
But it has to factor in to when you lose Fox and Shesterkin, your two legitimate, players who you need desperate. That's why Adam to me is a guy, although that defensive position, the way it's played in the last 5 years, has changed dramatically from the style of play, right? But make no mistake, Adam Fox and his skill set for this Ranger franchise, they need him desperately for that guy that while he's I always say, you're going to go to the rink, you're going to notice Makar, you're going to notice Quinn Hughes, you're going to notice Jeff Sanderson, you're going to notice Werenski. But at the end of the day, you look at the sheet, he's got 2 assists, he's +2, he's played 24 minutes, and that's Adam Fox.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Did we digress?
See, I'm all about this. I was on the show. I had Johnny Lasser doubled over one day laughing because I'm like, listen, man, you got to get used to it. I'm going to go down. Like, I'll be saying one thing and next thing, we're going to be down 5 roads to the right here. That's just, so that's how I operate. So I love the stream of consciousness because, you have so much to share and, your thoughts. And I appreciate it. And I do want to let the fans know a couple things, or the listeners here and viewers know a couple things. It's going to be a lot of Dave Maloney this summer. Going to see you this weekend, Sunday. Mm-hmm. It's the New York State Hockey Hall of Fame, of which you are an inductee in the past. Mm-hmm. And now you are going to help induct Brother Don, if you guys are in speaking terms.
No, we're always on speaking terms.
But that's this weekend up in Troy, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to be recording Rink Rap from up there as well. Looking forward to seeing Donnie. Neil Smith's going to be there. Nikki Fitzhugh. I know Sam's going to help induct some people as well. So we've got that this weekend. And of course, at the end of the month, something very, very near and dear to your heart is the growing shoulder check movement and campaign. And of course, the charity event that's going to take place on the 30th. And this year, bigger and better. Sacred Heart University. It's going to be a really cool event again.
Yeah, there's a couple. Obviously, you mentioned a couple things, and again, the way my life evolved as a Ute, as they would say in Brooklyn or whatever. Obviously, I'm the oldest of 7 Maloney kids, and the first 3 of us were boys, and Don was the 3rd one. And we're probably typical of a young Irish farming family where we spent more time fighting one another than talking to one another. And as time would go on, our hockey careers would separate. We actually played together on a team in 1967, a squirt team out of Lindsay, Ontario. It was the only time my brother Bob and Don and I played together. So to then end up playing together for 6 years with the Rangers was really one of the highlights of my career. So I have the honor of introducing Don. And but all of his career, the numbers are 2-time All-Star and MVP, the catalyst in our 79 run, all belie just who he was and the way he played, the way he went about his business, in a really admirable way. For a younger brother, I couldn't be more proud of who he certainly became as a player and who he is as a person. So that's quite an honor to be part of Don's induction. I look forward to that on Sunday. And as far as the shoulder check, this will be year 4. I was very, very fortunate there to get involved at the ground level. Of course, it's an initiative to raise awareness to teenage suicides. The Thorson family is very involved. They've just done they have taken this initiative on, and thankfully, being in the ad business, it's been run right from the day one. This year will include a 2-hour broadcast on the NHL Network. It will include there will be a beer garden out in the parking lot. There'll be music, and it is at Sacred Heart. It's a tremendous, no offense to the town of Stamford and Terry Connors Arena, which has been a supporter, but this is the next level. It really, it really is. I talked to Rob last week, Rob Thorson, Rebecca's wife, daughter, and it's so exciting. JT Miller's going to play. There's a number of the cult hero Matt Rempe will be involved.
Yeah,
guy Dorofeyev, a bunch of guys. Trevor Zegras, obviously. Trevor Zegras and Chris Kreider are the co-leaders from the Players Coalition. Is Dean Prentice's. Dean Prentice has just been a wonderful, wonderful supporter, putting players together to put on this event. So I'm so happy for the Thorson family and looking very much forward to that event at Sacred Heart University up in Hamden, Connecticut. It might take a trip to get there, but it's going to be a great day. So I would encourage people to log on to shouldercheck.org.com to purchase a ticket. Come on up and enjoy a great event.
Yeah, and I missed last year's event. I was there a couple of years ago. Well, I will be up at Sacred Heart this year. Again, that's July 30th. And like you, I just spoke to Rob last week as well. And just to hear every year when I speak to him, you usually speak a couple times a year. Every time I speak to him, I said, so what's different this year? And he just talks about how it's just expanding and and it's a real organic thing about how the word's spreading through not only the hockey community, but through all communities, through all walks of life, though hockey is the heart of it because of course, the Thorson's late son and his love of the game and all. To me, it's so powerful that every time we speak, I feel fired up because I see how it's growing every year. It's growing exponentially. There's no flatlining. More and more people are embracing this. And most importantly, the message is being delivered to those who need it most. I think that's the most important
thing.
I
think the last thing for me, the message is a simple one, right? And it's a message that can apply to any, especially, where we are culturally, where there seems to be, although there have been a few more galvanizing events recently, particularly with the Knicks around New York and the World Cup, and that think, what, people actually do like one another. and need to be encouraged to not to be afraid to express or to reach out, make contact. And that's been the message. And it's a pretty simple one, although lots of times perhaps people need to be encouraged to believe in the fact that there might be somebody out there that your simple gesture would have a positive impact. And I think through thick and thin, again, this has been a wonderfully well-run event.
Yeah.
Parsons. But the message is pretty straightforward in a simple way that I just think is pretty appealing and pretty neat. So it's good.
Yeah. Totally agree. And I know Rob always mentions you in our conversations, how much he appreciates, all your efforts, as well as Kreider and Zegras and their families and Prentice and everybody who comes through that's through his gym and his as a trainer. It seems like all of his guys take part in this event. You mentioned Dorofeyev, even before he was a Ranger, was working out at Prentice during the summers and took part in this event. So July 30th, I hope people go to the website, and I will continue to provide the information here. And Sunday, I'll get to see you. I'll see Don, Sam. Have a little reunion. It'll be a lot of fun. And I appreciate all your time today. I know you're busy and all that. I'll probably have to go out and sun yourself in the afternoon or something. But no, seriously, I appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun having you aboard, Dave.
Yeah, Jimmy, I look forward to seeing you Sunday. And really, it's fun talking hockey. It really is. And appreciate having me on. And until next time, which will be Sunday, have fun.